respect your time and be efficient. And I don't want to talk down to you. I want to move quickly so that we can get through a lot of information rather than holding your hand and babying you here. You can always ask questions as we go and tell me if I'm moving too quickly. All right, this is a Center for Executive Coaching open house about coaching high potential managers and leaders. Let me start with some introductions and then get to the outcomes and the agenda today. From time to time, I'll show you a couple of quotes from some of our Center for Executive Coaching members. We're all about results. I love when people calculate for me the return on investment they've gotten so far by joining the Center for Executive Coaching. Here, Eric shares that he's gotten at least a 400% return on investment, at least when he wrote this. We're still in touch, and he's doing great with his coaching practice. Just quickly, myself, I live in Sarasota, Florida, with my wife and 3 wonderful children. Have a Jack Russell Terrier. I'm working from home today. You might hear her in the background, with my apologies if you do. I got out of Harvard Business School, started as a management consultant for quite a few years. Ultimately, a client told me something that got me into coaching. He said, listen, Andrew, I don't need this 500-page PowerPoint. I already knew all this stuff. What I need is someone I can sit down with who can walk me through the tough decisions I have to make. And it was right there that I said, you know, this is kind of true. This is what all my clients tell me. They kind of know the answers. And all of this analysis is a formality. Why don't I just do the stuff they really want? I don't need these teams of analysts. I don't need to travel around the country and stay at clients for 4 days a week. I didn't really know executive coaching existed, but that's essentially what it was. And there was demand for it. And that's how I became an executive coach. Once I did, people started coming to me for training. And once they referred people I didn't know, that's how the Center for Executive Coaching got started. As a result of that, we're extremely market focused. There's no fluff here. It's all about what clients want. We ultimately got accredited by the International Coach Federation. We now have 1,000 graduates from about 32 countries, and some of the top companies in the world call on us to train their personnel, both internal coaches as well as executives. We train internal coaches as well as lots of people who want to start their own coaching practices. We're also approved for the board certified coach certification. Along the way, I've gotten to write some books, including with the late J. Conrad Levinson. We've written 3 books together, including Guerrilla Marketing for Coaches, written Coach, most recently, The Way to Coach Executives, and Elegant Leadership. The Center for Executive Coaching itself started in 2002, okay? So there's 2 outcomes today, all right? The outcome that will take about 80% of our time is for you to understand what it takes to coach high potential managers and leaders in organizations, okay? That's what you're here for. That's the majority of the content. At the end, for those of you who are looking for a coach training program, or for seasoned coaches who are looking to go deeper with your tools, I want to talk a little bit about what sets the Center for Executive Coaching apart and which program might be right for you. You don't have to stick around for this part if you don't want to. We have distance learning. We have in-person seminars. Some of you might want the International Coach Federation designation. Some of you might not want that. There's the board certified coach option for those with a master's degree or higher. And for those of you who are seasoned coaches, we have our famous Coach Master Toolkit. You can carve out just the business development intensive if you want to get more clients. We have our high performance coaching academy and some other programs as well. So the agenda today: why high potentials? Why does it make sense to focus on them with a coaching program? What are the requirements if you're going to set up a coaching program for high potentials? We'll go through the overall process, how to set it up. I'll show you the coaching plan. Then I'll show you 2 add-ons or alternatives that might make the process more efficient, help you bring leverage to it. One is what's called a high performance coaching academy, and another is training the direct managers to be coaches so that they can coach the high potentials. And then again, we'll move to the next steps and talking about the Center for Executive Coaching only if you're interested. Okay. So let's start by talking about high potentials? Why would we want to be focusing on them? Why would you want to be here? Why is this a good niche for coaches, and why should internal coaches care? Well, high potentials are the backbone of most organizations, and yet they often receive piecemeal professional development. So some of my coaching practice, for instance, is in healthcare. And those of you who know healthcare know that there's usually a revolving door at the top, and there's a pretty good bench of leaders in the middle, but nobody really takes good care of them. So they're highly clinical, they're technical by nature, and they don't get the kind of training they need to be leaders. And as a result, the organization suffers. They just don't develop the capacity they need. And I see this in a lot of other organizations too. High potentials are also key to succession planning, and therefore one of the best ways to develop organizational capacity. They're often the weak link for leadership strength. Again, that is, they often have technical or clinical skills, but nobody's helped them fill in that other dimension of skills for leadership. And finally, and maybe you were a high potential manager or leader before you were a coach or doing whatever you're doing now, and you had to go to these trainings that were purchased, these generic trainings from the big companies that had the brand names, but really offered pretty lousy trainings, these generic off-the-shelf one-size-fits-all trainings. Well, it turns out that high potential managers and leaders hate those trainings. They roll their eyes at them, they get bored by them. These are the folks who need a custom approach. They just don't respond well to the generic, hey, here's the 7 disciplines or habits or principles or whatever, and we are going to force them down your throat, and you better learn them and try to apply them to this organization even if they don't really fit. And so for all of those reasons, a coaching program for high potentials makes a lot of sense. Okay. Any questions so far, by the way, about the agenda, the outcome, or why high potentials? Ask questions anytime, and I don't mind breaking to get to your concerns or challenges, etc. And let me know all good too, as one of you just did, so thank you. So there's 3 requirements, and quite frankly, organizations fail at these 3 requirements all the time. Maybe you're in an organization now and you're going to chuckle when you see these, and I hope not, but we'll see. Okay. One of you asked, am I also talking about high potentials at the individual contributor level, or do they have to be managing others to be considered? No, these could be high potentials at any level. These are people who are identified as performing well and with the potential trajectory to be leaders at some point in the company. All right. And so it's really up to the organization to decide who they want to invest in. Typically, in my experience, though, it's managers or people who have been identified to have management potential. You might have different programs depending on the level, though, and depending on their experience. Okay. So let's get to these 3 requirements. The first, and this is the one that breaks down the most, is that leadership is committed and involved. So what does that mean? It means that senior leadership is talking up whatever program is out there for high potentials. They're inviting the participants personally. They're recruiting coaches, facilitators, trainers, anybody involved in the program who's well respected to lead the coaching process. Right, so the U.S. Marines is a great example of this. If you know who gets to be the Marine trainers or drill sergeants are respected people who come in from the field. It's not low-level people who are not respected. They also make it part of an ongoing, well-funded, continuous initiative. How often have you seen organizations where they have any kind of professional development initiative that's piecemeal, that's not well funded, where the people involved are not respected, where the people involved have multiple other roles and sort of do this as they can, where it's check the box training, that is, we're just going to do a half day on, time management, and we don't really care if it's tied to the rest of the organization. They'll just do it, forget it, but we can say we did it. And it needs to be tied to something strategic. It has to be tied to strategic initiatives to work. Okay, if these things aren't in place, what's the point? Why bother? And unfortunately, we see all the time lip service initiatives, whether it's high potentials or any other kind of professional development. All right, so, if you're an internal coach, I feel bad for you if you're stuck having to deliver something and you don't have anything other than lip service from senior leadership. My advice is push back as best you can and get your resume going to be an external coach and find organizations where they'll pay for you because they are committed. If you're external, don't take jobs or engagements or gigs where you don't see leadership commitment. It's not worth it. You're going to look bad because these things won't go well. Number two, there have to be structures in place to make any kind of coaching program comprehensive. So that means recruiting attracts the right type of people. There's rewards in place for high potentials as well as for their managers for developing high potentials. There have to be career paths in the organization that keep high potentials motivated and giving them purpose. Again, in healthcare, all of this can be really tricky because you have rewards, you have rewards that are nothing more than inflation bumps on their salaries. You have career paths that go nowhere, where people are stuck where they are for years. It's really hard to have somebody who's called a high potential when there's nowhere to go. There's no growth in the organization. You need to have development plans, professional development plans that are real, that are not just bureaucratic exercises that get, where a form gets filled out and people say, these are the skills I will develop, and they get put in a filing cabinet or in a computer file somewhere. There have to be real bonuses or other forms of rewards, recognition, and compensation that they care about. And there have to be true professional development opportunities that make this a comprehensive initiative. So things like informal mentors, affinity groups, training and education. Okay, so this has to be real deal, systemic approach to professional development. So leadership has to be committed, structures have to be in place. And number three, there has to be a focus on how people really develop, right? Any study of how professionals get better will reveal that the number one and number two in development is unfortunately not human resources. It's not the coach. It's managers and assignments. It's having a good manager who knows how to engage and develop their direct reports. And it's having assignments that challenge high potentials to show what they can do. Those are the one and two things. If those don't exist, and you have high potentials who are bored and have managers who feel threatened, they're going to leave. If you have managers who won't develop them, won't take the time, they're just not going to stick around. Similarly, you need an organization that sets people up with autonomy, growth, and the ability to earn new and more challenging roles and assignments. It doesn't have to be a vertical organization. It can be a flat organization, but there has to be constant opportunities to learn, to grow, to master something that has purpose and fulfillment for them. Okay? Does that all make sense? Three things: leadership, structure, a focus on how people really develop. Yes? Duana asks for just an example of affinity. You see here affinity groups on that last bullet. So affinity groups are just areas where people can get together, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, and talk about things that matter to them. For instance, it could be a group of female up-and-comers who talk about issues that women have in the organization and provide support to each other. It could be people who have an interest in a particular technology or agile development or something and talk about that. That's all I'm talking about there. All right, so now let's talk about the overall process for coaching. Good, yeah, Karen says we call these our mastermind groups. All right, that's a good name too. So here's a process for coaching these folks. Look how simple this is. I prefer a 12-month coaching process. And right here, we get to a problem, right? I've seen internal coaching groups, and again, if you're an external coach, you can set this up, but internally where all they do is say, look, call us if you want coaching. Our phone lines are always open. That's not a coaching program. That's the California Psychic Hotline, all right, where you just call and it's like per minute billing. I'm talking about a robust coaching program that's committed to helping somebody succeed, that makes a long-term, and 12 months is long-term in today's corporate world, investment in somebody's development. Okay, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 9 months, 12 months is good. All right, and so what we're going to do is there's some setup where we recruit the individual and contract with them. We're going to do some assessment and clarify goals, but the majority of the process is coaching, tracking, getting feedback, coaching, tracking, moving towards results. And in the middle of the process, we're going to do some reassessment to make sure there's progress towards the goal. All right. Internally, yeah, the coach, one of you is asking, should the coach be part of the selection of the high potential? They may or may not be part of the selection of who is considered high potential in the company, but they're certainly part of the process to make sure there's a fit with the coaching program. All right, but this is the process. It's not complicated. I love coaching compared to consulting, engineering, software, because you can always map out the coaching plan on one page, and I'll show you another way to do it soon. So setup, what's that look like? The recruiting process should be set up to make it look like a privilege and an honor. Again, coaching in many organizations, as you know, has a stigma still attached to it, where coaching is what you do to someone you're about to fire, where coaching is part of that 90-day performance improvement plan. That's not what we're talking about. Here we're creating something that is a privilege. You have been selected because we care about you. We see a bright future for you. It is an honor, and therefore we're setting very high expectations about your participation and your commitment. This is not for everybody. And for that reason, we want the invitation to come from senior leadership. Okay, so this is much like receive, and in fact, there might even be an application process where individuals are expected to apply and be interviewed. Okay, so I want to make that clear. There is a process that creates a sense that this is something special. There's also a contracting process. All right, now those of you in the Center for Executive Coaching get this document in Word. This is copyright with us, but let me just take you through it. I want everybody in the program to sign something that has clear goals and clear understanding. So the coach, the client's manager are all going to sign this. We're gonna define what coaching is. We're going to set up to 3 goals during the engagement, subject to change as the engagement progresses. We're going to talk about meeting every week, starting on a certain date, although we may meet every other week or even less, depending on the need. The initial term will be 12 months. At the end of 6 months, we'll evaluate results and decide whether we see value in extending the engagement further. I mentioned which assessments we'll do. I'll cover that in a minute. Now, here's something really important. I want everything discussed to be confidential. Okay, so this is not going through human resources. The only exception is if the individual is dumb enough to say that they're going to do harm to themselves or others, or that they're doing anything illegal within the company. Okay, and the only status update provided is if whether they're showing up for their coaching sessions. Results are expected to show up through improved performance in their role. Okay, I take confidentiality very, very seriously. I was burned in my first coaching experience as a client, where the coach shared some things I said to the CEO of the company, and it hurt our relationship. So for me, I don't want anyone involved except myself and the client. It's really important. And then there's a list of my responsibilities to you as your coach. This is what the coach would say. And I want the client to agree to certain things. like the coaching relationship is important. They're committed to achieving the goals. They're open to receiving coaching, including willingness to hear advice. They'll attend all coaching sessions on time, how they'll reschedule. They'll be present. There'll be no external distractions. They'll complete any assignments that they agree to do on time. They'll be open and honest, including giving advice to the coach about how to get more value. And they'll do an honest review of the coaching program in the middle and at the end of the engagement so we can assess the program and make improvements. Now, look, you can add anything you want to this. I just want to give you an example of what a contract looks like. Okay, but I want to make sure this is serious. These things sound easy, but you know as well as I do, it's hard for people just to show up on time and do their homework these days. Heck, I work with lots of coaches. I'm amazed at how few coaches have their act together to show up on time and do simple homework. All right. Any questions about the contracting? I'll talk more about what should be in the goals in a moment. But again, we're making this a privilege. They're going to apply. Senior leadership's involved in inviting them. We're making this a big deal. There's a process. Okay. And we're going to do some assessments. Goals will come after the assessments, right? We're going to revisit the goals after the assessments. I like to do 4 assessments when I'm working with high potentials. And I'll show you all 4. One is some sort of off-the-shelf, highly validated, normative, not ipsative. Ipsative means self-reporting. Like the Myers-Briggs is self-reporting. That's where people say, I'd rather have this than that. Normative will compare this individual on a bell curve to others. So they get to see where they are on thinking styles and behavioral traits. So it will show their strengths and challenges in the form of thinking styles, behavioral traits, and even occupational interests. It's pretty cool. I use the Profile XT. I'll show you an example. You don't have to use the Profile XT. I love it. I'll show you why I love it shortly. I just want to make sure you're using a validated assessment tool. A lot of coaches use tools that do not have very high reliability and validation scores. And it's a shame. They look really pretty. They have lots of beautiful reports, but they're doing a disservice to their clients because they're not reliable and they're not validated. Number 2, I want to do some sort of baseline 360 assessment of competency so I can do a before and after comparison. I also want to do a verbal 360 to get input about the impact the person has on key relationships. And I want to do what I call the leader's dashboard or a development plan, depending on how high up the individual is in the organization. I'll show you all 4 of these. This is just like an executive summary. Karen asked, what would I consider the DISC assessment? That's an ipsative assessment. It's a 2x2 grid where people talk about their preferences and puts them. It's a very simple assessment. It has an okay reliability and validity score, but it's not a normative assessment. Let me show you what I mean by a normative tool. Here's a example of a Profile XT. What I love now, what you want to do is put a bell curve on top of this. Okay, so where it says 1 through 10, don't think of a 10 as good and a 1 as bad. Just put a bell curve so that the middle of the curve is like 4, 5, 6, and 7. Like 67% of the population of leaders or of peers, and this is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of managers, fits in a 4, 5, 6, or 7. And then, if you're a 10, that's only like, I don't know what, 12% of the population. If you're a 1, it's 12% of the population. Left isn't bad, 10 isn't good. They're just, you're out there. You don't need to be certified to administer this. And if you're interested, you can shoot me an email and I can get you a contact, under which you can work. In the Center for Executive Coaching, you take one of these when you join. So you can actually take one and see if you like it. So for instance, here, this individual, if you look at the sociability score, is a 1. This is somebody who doesn't like small talk, doesn't like to socialize, get into big groups, doesn't mind, small groups in small quantities, but tends to like to work alone, but is like in 10% of the population. So if this person had to work in a situation where there were large groups, lots of social interaction, networking, like I don't think this person would be great at being the head of business development. This person wouldn't love going to Chamber of Commerce networking events. In fact, that would be this person's version of hell. So it's pretty cool. That doesn't mean it's a weakness, right? If this person happened to be an analyst and loved working alone, fantastic. Similarly, on verbal skill, this person is a 9. By the way, that doesn't mean this, learning index, this person is a 7. This doesn't relate to IQ. It just means this person can process verbal information very quickly. People on the left can be in Mensa. People on the right, people in the middle can be in Mensa. What it means is for this person, they can process and speak very, short, quick. They get it very quickly. This could be of great strength, but it can also be a weakness, because if this person is trying to talk to the general population or people on the left who tend to need very concrete information or things laid out step by step, they might be in trouble. People might feel like they have to read this person's mind. And anyway, I don't want to give a seminar on this particular tool. I just want to let you know it's really a neat one-page tool. Technical people love it. Clinical people love it because they're put on a bell curve. They understand data, and on one page, we can get to know them. All right, so it's pretty cool. Similarly, like look at energy level. This person is a 9. Energy level means ability to handle multiple projects, how much drive they, drive to get a lot of things done. So generally someone like that who's on the right compared to somebody who's on the left who likes to do one thing at a time very meticulously, those two types of people could clash. You can imagine the types of coaching you could have with this person in a 1-hour session, just debriefing this, asking questions like, so how do you do with somebody whose energy level might be a 1, 2, or 3? How do you adapt to somebody whose verbal skill and verbal reasoning might be more to the left of the scale? How do you work with teams when they ask you to go out for the evening? Anyway, I don't care necessarily which tool you use. I just want you to use a tool so that you can very quickly get to the heart of maybe finding one thing this person can work on to be better, and so that you can start to know them. All right? It's a really nifty tool. Also down at the bottom, it has occupational interest. This person happens to be technical, enterprising, mechanical. Some of the others involve people pleasing, working with people, creative, and I fear financial, administrative is the other one. Okay, and that's based on the RIASIC scale, for those who know that. Anyway, this is the point of this is not to have a discussion about different assessments, just to say, if you're going to coach high potentials, as with any coaching program, please use one highly validated, reliable tool. That's one piece. 2, I want to use some sort of 360-degree online tool so that I can do a before and after assessment, so that I can bake results into my program. The Profile XT comes from Profiles International. I like that suite of tools because they also have a tool called the Checkpoint 360. And what they do is have an online 360 that looks at 8 leadership competencies, and it breaks down into like 18, I don't know, other things, and then ultimately like 70 different leadership behaviors. And so within 15 minutes, somebody can rate your client on a scale of 1 to 5 on almost never, seldom, sometimes, usually, and almost always how often they see certain leadership behaviors. And so you can get a sense of how aware your client is, because they'll rate themselves on these behaviors. Their direct reports, if they have any, will rate them. Their peers will rate them, and 1 or 2 leaders or senior leaders will rate them. And so you get a really nice report. In addition, their manager will rate them, will be asked, what do you think the top leadership competencies are in terms of importance for their job, and that will be compared to what the client says are the most important competencies for the job. And so you'll see how well they're aligned even on saying what's important to get done in the job. And so what's nice about this is you can do a baseline at the beginning and see where your client has strengths and opportunities to improve. You can figure out which ones are most important based on where management says the most important competencies are for success in this job. And you can pick a few behaviors to improve, maybe just one, to improve during the coaching, and then you can do a midterm and end term comparison so that you can bake numeric results in to the coaching and confirm that the coaching made improvements. Okay, so the 1 to 5 shows how frequently people see improvements. Here what you have is a spider graph. Just quickly, again, I don't want to give a seminar on how to look at this, but this shows a before and after. If you look at task management, for instance, you'll see the self and all observers, and you'll see a gap where the self rates him or herself one way and all observers rates them another way, right? So the previous, all observers gave a 3.41, and the self thought they were much better, a 3.75. By the end of the process, all observers moved up to a 3.54. And so you had a little bit more, you had things become a little bit closer. You want to get things in this tool, there's something called the favorable zone. You want to get the client into the favorable zone. And that's basically what happens here. Sometimes the client goes down in certain other skills that you're not focusing on, and that gives you something to work on if they're important to their job for additional coaching. The only point I'm making here is you want a way to bake in results. Too many coaches are way too fluffy. There's no way to hold the process accountable. And by having a tool like this, you have specific behaviors that are measurable, specific competencies. You can pick one or two, and you can work on it through a behavioral coaching process throughout the 12 months. It's really, really nice. Okay, so that's the second assessment we want. The third is a 360 verbal. Hopefully you've done one of these. We have a really nice process in the Center for Executive Coaching that we teach. But basically, the coach is going to interview 8 to 12 colleagues up, down, and across the organization. With some organizations, I'll even interview outside, like consulting firms or law firms, if they'll let me. It's confidential. I'm only looking for trends. I won't ever tell my client or HR or anybody, who said what. And I start with just 3 questions. What are up to 3 things the client does well? What's one thing the client can start doing, do more, stop doing, or do less that will have maximum impact on their effectiveness? And what other advice can you offer to help them be even better? Now, if my client already knows what they want to work on, maybe I'll make this more specific, right? If they know they want to work on their communication, maybe I can tailor this to what are up to 3 things the client does well when they communicate. And then I'm going to summarize this back to the client in a way that doesn't share who says what. So I might say, you do these things well. To build on these strengths and achieve some of the goals you talked to me about in your current position, here's one thing we might work on together based on what most of the people I spoke with seem to be telling me. And that's how I report it back. This is a great way to get a sense of the impact the person is having subjectively in the organization. The Checkpoint 360 also allows for comments. And so we can get comments that way as well. All right. Vic asks, how do you create a safe environment for the participants to be truthful? Honestly, I've really never had that problem. If I notice that participants don't feel safe, that's interesting data to me, right? That tells me that there's something up with the relationship, or that we have an organization where there isn't trust. But the fact is, if you have an organization where there isn't trust, odds are good they're not going to create a coaching program like this, right? So I've been blessed that usually organizations that allow a coaching practice like this to happen already have people who understand and are willing to give this kind of feedback. The final thing I want to do is either a leadership dashboard or some sort of development plan. So at the Center for Executive Coaching, we have a really nice one-page leaders dashboard where I challenge the client on one page. And again, this would be for a higher level, high potential, but on one page, I want for their area of responsibility. It could be for that, it could be for their career. I want to know their vision, their mission, their values, their edge. Edge means, what sets them or what sets their area of responsibility apart. I want to know no more than 3, their top 3 performance initiatives. I want to know their top 3 performance metrics, their key relationships, their key professional relationships for success, and their top professional development opportunities. Or if it's the organization, their top opportunities to build capacity in the organization. And it's really, we'll talk about it. It's up to them whether they want to do it for their career or for their area of responsibility. Or both. We could do 2 of these, one for them professionally and one for their area of responsibility. I love this tool. On one page, they're challenged to get the most important questions down. And we could spend time just coaching them on this as an assessment, and then throughout the coaching process, we can bring it out from time to time to see how they're doing on their initiatives and performance metrics. It gets them totally focused. Because a lot of people in middle management feel like they're scattered. They have too many priorities. This solves that problem. This says, look, if you're going to spend 20% of your time or 80% of your time, 80% of your time on the 20% of the things that have maximum impact, what would those things be? This solves that problem. So those are the 4 things. By the way, if they're lower down, we might do what's called a one-page career plan. This is from my book, Guerrilla Marketing for a Bulletproof Career. It's also a toolkit in our Coach Master Toolkit. And, here we're just looking at their career. Where do you want to spike? Where do you want to be great? What value do you bring to others? What's your vision for your career in this organization? What are the values that guide your career? What do you see as possible next steps in your career? Right? So those are some key questions. Given that, what's your plan? What are the assignments or projects to get you there? What are the skills you have to develop or knowledge? Who are the key people you need to know? What education or training might you need? What other action steps might get you there? What's the plan? And so again, this is a nice assessment tool for career planning to get them there. So we have basically 4 assessments, right? An off-the-shelf assessment to understand their thinking styles and behavioral traits, a measurable 360, a subjective verbal 360, and some sort of dashboard or career plan. If we have all of this in place up front, we have basically set ourselves up for a really nice coaching program because we can set some goals now and we can get to the coaching. Okay? And so that's where we're going to move to. So now we can set clear goals. See, again, a lot of coaches, and I blame a little bit some of the coaching associations for this, they don't focus enough on goals and results. It's just, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And I think that's a tragedy. In really good coaching, we are always tying ourselves back to value and measurable results. And so if you want to coach high potentials or really anybody in an organization, we need goals up front. And for me, there are a couple of goals. Okay, one, I want to tie what we're doing to success in their role and ideally some strategic initiative that matters to leadership. Right? One of the reasons leadership doesn't get involved in these things is because they think they're irrelevant. So if we could go to leadership and say, look, what are the strategic initiatives that matter? How can we get these high potentials involved? And let's set a goal so that they are involved with a specific goal that's tied to, so that success in their role is tied to success for you and your strategic initiatives. That could be huge. Number two, I want them to pick a leadership behavior or competency that they know they have to work on. And that's going to come out of the assessment work they did. Maybe they see an area that they have trouble adapting in, or that's been a problem area for them from the Profile XT or from the 360. And we can identify that to work on. And at the same time, every single session, and people in the Center for Executive Coaching know this, we start every session with, what are we going to do today to make sure it's the most valuable hour of your week, so that there's clear accountability. And we want to make sure it's tied to the overall goals of the engagement. All right, let's see, here's a good question. How would we approach this for an individual who wants to do this for themselves? Like the company's not paying. How does the 360 work in this case? I've done this quite a lot with people who pay out of pocket. It's the same. It's just, anytime you do a 360, you're not the one who schedules those meetings. It's the client's responsibility to pick the 8 to 12 people and get their permission. They send out the email and get their permission. So they need to do that. That's all. They just have to pay for these and make it happen. If they can't do that, then you get to coach them on influence, because that tells you they can't even influence. They don't even have a strong enough power base to get people to give them simple feedback. Okay, good. Let's see. Anthony says, setting and achieving goals is one major issue high potentials need coaching on. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's another reason why we do this here. A lot of them, it's a great point you made. I just spoke to somebody yesterday. He wanted to coach. He says, I loved your video about, giving up to a 10 times return on investment on your coaching. I said, yeah, so what's your goal? What would make our coaching relationship worth 5 to 10 times? He said, I don't know. I got to get back to you on that. So you're exactly right. They often don't know how to do it. They're excited, but they don't know how to do it. So good question. Karen says, do you ever use a values survey to help with goal setting? Well, again, the leader's dashboard looks at their values, and we compare that to their company. And there's a process. What I showed you for the leader's dashboard didn't show you the whole toolkit, because the toolkit includes some idea joggers about picking values. So yeah, good. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So that's setting. I give you some examples of clear goals. So related to the role, so I worked, for instance, with a consultant who was attempting to make partner, right? Actually, it was a whole program for senior associates who wanted to get up to the partner role. Well, they had to achieve a certain amount of sales, sometimes add-on work, but they had to achieve a milestone of selling a certain amount of consulting engagements in a certain calendar year. So they all set goals for that. For a project engineer, it might be showing the ability to lead an agile team representing a budget of some amount and achieving a project outcome within a certain time frame. And then examples tied to a leadership competency or behavior. Those can be real simple. I worked with one where it was give team members positive feedback after each meeting. It was as simple as that. Like all of his team members said, we love this guy, but man, he can be really negative. If he would just be more positive after meetings. So that was it. We just worked on changing that behavior. It was real easy to do. A lot of times we'll let people finish what they're saying and demonstrate what I hear, that I hear what they're saying before I speak. So we get, a lot of abrupt people who don't let people finish. We get, delegate all work that's categorized as project management work to direct reports. So sometimes for folks to move up, they have to learn to delegate and not be the frontline person. Okay. So those are examples of goals. We have to set good goals. And once we do, we can move into the coaching plan. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. Let's stop here and let's get any questions you have. All right, let's see. What if someone is paying for himself? Participants initially give feedback and then retreat from further assessments. I don't know the answer to that. That hasn't happened to me, so I don't know. I guess we have to look at why, right? I mean, as a coach, what would be our questions? We'd have to say, so what happened? What is this telling you? Michael says there are critics of the SMART goal format. What are your thoughts? I don't know. I don't use the SMART goal format, so I don't know. I just try to ask them, what outcome do you want? I'm more of the videotapable. You know, if we were going to have my 12-year-old son videotape it, would he be able to say that it happened? Number one. And number two, I'm more about value. You know, would senior leadership say this is value? You know, that's what really matters, right? Is this value to senior leadership, to shareholders, to your customers? That's what matters. Okay, how are we doing? Are we moving at a good pace? Are we okay? Let me know that too. Fazil says, what if you are in a culture where people think they know everything? You're probably not going to get hired as a coach is the answer, right? If people think they know everything, they're not coachable. So you don't have to worry about it. Okay, right? We can only do this in a place where people understand the value of coaching. And there are lots of cultures where people think they know everything. So let them implode, they have to have a problem, right? The first thing we teach in the Center for Executive Coaching, you can only coach people when they have a big problem and they're willing to give permission to be coached. If those two things don't exist, that's it. That's the Achilles heel of coaching. That's the kryptonite of coaching. Yep, you're in the wrong place to establish coaching. All right, so look, here's how the coaching plan works. Frequency and scope. I'm going to start with weekly meetings and go every other week or even monthly as needed. All right, so start weekly. You know, usually these folks are hungry to talk to you, but as they make progress, don't take time just to take their time. Okay, and I want to see a 1-year commitment. I really like a 1-year commitment with these folks. It seems to take about a year. Okay, with executives, I'll do 6 months, but with high potentials, it's a 1-year commitment. They have so much going on that 1 year can be really good. The session format typically looks like this. I want to start with a clear, powerful intent, right? Again, I said this. What will make our session today the most valuable hour of your week? Usually, this will start with coaching about current challenges, but as you know, the current challenges almost always relate to the bigger picture. Right? Whatever they have going on almost always relates to whatever came up in the 360, whatever came up with their profile XT or whatever assessment you did, whatever came up with whatever their goals are. Okay, so the thing is though, without talking about current challenges, they're going to be distracted. So it takes a little finesse to tie these back to the bigger goals. And so then we can go back to reviewing the goals, staying focused on results, talking about their specific initiatives, their leadership competency and behavior and how that's going. By the way, in the Center for Executive Coaching, we have a very specific approach to improving a behavior. And so we'll ask about how they're doing with their homework on that. It's based on cognitive psychology, cognitive behavioral psychology. And part of that is they're going to get monthly feedback, you know, much as Goldsmith does, but adapted significantly to reflect the fact that I'm not Marshall Goldsmith. I don't have his brand. So I have to embed this as part of a coaching practice. I just want feedback from up to 5 supporters reporting back to the coach about how they did. Okay, so I want, you know, the middle managers that do the best are usually the ones who are open to feedback from supporters, learning how they can get better. My favorite success story was a guy I worked with a long time ago who did this and ultimately moved up to be the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. You know, he went to business school, he became a partner in McKinsey, and he ultimately became a CFO at a Fortune 500 company, starting just as a high potential sort of lower end manager. All he did was ask his supporters, 5 supporters every month for feedback, and he attributes that to a large degree to his success. So that's part of the coaching. And then as time permits, what we do, what I suggest, because they're high potentials, they maybe haven't had a lot of training, we can add a specific leadership topic or toolkit from the Center for Executive Coaching. And as time permits, we talk about it. You know, so maybe it's about resolving a conflict, engaging employees, managing up, leading change, leading teams. Again, our center has 27 of these. If you're already a seasoned coach, you can buy this a la carte. It's our Coach Master Toolkit. You can even just buy 10 of them or 6 of them and get 4 free. And that way, what you're doing is a little bit of a leadership curriculum for your client. These things come up, right? You know, if they're having trouble engaging employees, well, there's a toolkit you want to bring in. So you're putting structure to this. It's a really powerful approach. And so here's a list of our toolkits. And these are the types of things that high potential leaders need, or managers need to know. They just don't get this stuff, and they need it just in time. It doesn't work to give it to them with a generic training. As a coach, you can give it to them as part of a ready-to-go leadership curriculum where you embed it through coaching. Okay. And finally, results tracking have to be baked in. Okay. So we are always tracking via the dashboard or career plan to make sure that they're doing that. We're tracking how they're improving on their leadership competency or behavior. How are we doing that? We're doing that through the off-the-shelf 360 and through the fact that they're asking for feedback every month from 5 people. Every session is baking in accountability from the previous session because we're asking whether they did what they said they do. And every 6 months, again, we're checking results with a 360 verbal and the online 360 tool to see how they are developing. So this is nowhere to hide coaching. That's what we call it, nowhere to hide coaching. Results are baked in. This is not fluffy. It's tied to strategic initiatives, specific leadership competency improvements, their career plan or leader's dashboard, and specific challenges they're facing on the job. It's a beautiful, specific program. So specific, for instance, in healthcare, if it's an emerging nurse manager, we're talking about any kind of clinical initiative she has going on. We're talking about productivity improvement. All right, here's a couple of questions. Do coaching sessions need to be in person? No, they can be Skype. They can be phone. I'm old-fashioned. I use phone. I don't love video conference, but video conference, is good. You can see body language. So if you have Zoom or GoToMeeting or BlueJean, those are really good to use. So you can see the body language. Okay. Let's see. Do you ask the questions about the most important thing to cover in the coaching session at the beginning, or do you ask it days in advance so they can have a more thoughtful answer? Really good question. It's an interesting question because a lot of my clients email me the agenda ahead of time. So I don't really try to have them, I don't ask them ahead of time, but maybe there's something about how I come across that they email me anyway ahead of time, if that makes sense. So you might want to ask them ahead of time what they want to achieve. Honestly, though, sometimes it changes. I mean, they'll have had a bad meeting just before the session, and that's what they want to talk about. But most of my clients will email me saying, hey, I'm looking forward to our session. Here's what I want to cover. Okay. Chris says, please talk a little bit more about where you draw the line between solving their problem for them and coaching with the provision of generic training or information tools. Well, it's real simple. The line is, I will not solve their problem for them. This is coaching, plain and simple. What our toolkits do is provide conversations. They provide areas of inquiry. That's all they do. They provide coaching questions and areas of inquiry. They provide idea joggers. I, as a coach, am never going to solve their problem because as a consultant, when I did that, nobody ever implemented it. It's the dumbest thing you can do as a coach. You're going to get in trouble because you know this, all of you know this. As coaches, we know that if we provide the answer, it's going to be wrong. It'll be right for what we would do if we were them, maybe, but it's wrong for them given their style, their organization, their fears, their skills. So that's the line. I do not provide the answer. I might say, can I ask permission to share an insight? But then I'll say, so what do you think of that? Annette says, to clarify, are you suggesting conducting the verbal 360 and online tool again in 6 months? That is exactly what I'm suggesting. Okay. Can I recommend a 360 assessment tool? Yeah, that's the Checkpoint 360 from Profiles. Okay. let's keep going. Thanks. All right, so all of this fits in one page. I have a one-page coaching plan, and then I'm going to share with you some add-ons that you can do to make this even more efficient. Okay, and then we'll take. Then I'll talk about the Center for Executive Coaching briefly for those who care, and then we'll take final questions. So you'll see 3 columns here: the session number, the topic or activity, and the potential curriculum. And again, by curriculum, what I mean here is a set of coaching conversations, okay? Because that was a really good question before, so I'll explain what that means. So like session 1 could be the orientation and setup, where we confirm fit, we set initial goals, we review the ground rules, and we set up all the various assessments I talked to you about. So between initial session and session 2, the client is completing the assessments, I'm interviewing, or the coach is interviewing participants for the verbal 360. You'll see how easy this is, right? I mean, I went through a lot of stuff, but it's really quite straightforward when you see it set up like this. Now, session 2 might be a couple of sessions, or it might be one long session. This is where we review the various assessments with the client. And the homework at the end is the client chooses one behavior that they're going to address. You know, one competency, one specific behavior that will have a big impact on their performance. We also clarify the goals. This is where we might shift the goals a little bit based on what we found from the assessments. Okay, and from there, the rest is coaching. We're going to set up the behavioral coaching process and move right into the coaching. We start with getting the behavioral coaching going, right? And again, we have a whole behavioral coaching process in the Center for Executive Coaching based on cognitive behavioral work. They're going to take notes. They're going to understand their behavior. They're going to understand how to create a new habit. But at the same time, we're going to look at their leader's dashboard and achieving those goals. We're going to look at current issues. And then if time permits, I might ask a provocative question based on what I'm hearing from them to introduce maybe some of the toolkits. Like I might say, hey, how's your power base? How's your power base in this organization? Because we have a really nice toolkit about power base, you know, your network of professional relationships. And if they don't know what I'm talking about, I might say, hey, this is an opportunity to talk about your network of professional relationships in the organization and just get them thinking about that. Or if something's coming up about influence, they have to influence someone, and it seems like they don't know what they're doing. I say, you know, let me take you through a process for thinking about influence. Would that be valuable to you? And so we're embedding this potential curriculum if they want it, only if they want it. We're not telling them what to do, but we're giving them a language and a way maybe of thinking about things that's really valuable for them. And then we keep going and we reassess to confirm results as appropriate. All right. So let me give you a couple of ways quickly to add leverage to this. One is with a high performance coaching academy. And the reason for this is sometimes just pure one-on-one coaching is too expensive. A coaching academy gives you high leverage because you're putting a group of people in a room monthly. They can coach each other. There's facilitation you can do. It's a powerful applied learning format combining a bunch of approaches, right? Coaching, training, facilitation, assessments. And it challenges high potentials who will not tolerate those cookie cutter programs. And again, results are baked in. So what you're doing here is taking a small group of managers. They're meeting monthly for a half day over 6 to 12 months. You're combining peer support, one-on-one coaching, great content, facilitation, and accountability for results. Each and every session is about bringing back just one thing. So one thing per month that they bring back specifically to their role to have high impact and get better results. The first hour of the half day, they're going to share what happened between their sessions and get coaching from each other. The next 2 hours, they'll get great content about something, some important leadership distinction. And you're not forcing it down their throats. It's a discussion about an area of leadership. And all they have to do is find one thing from that where they say, yeah, I see something where I can get better results based on this discussion. And then the last hour, they coach each other with your help to create an accountability plan for what they'll do between this session and the next one, and get coaching. So here's, we have one. We have a turnkey high performance coaching academy. You can see it if you go to centerforexecutivecoaching.com and you click for seasoned coaches, you'll see it under high performance coaching academy. Our agenda, our first meeting is about the behaviors of leaders. Then there's a coaching session. Meeting 2 is perceptions of leaders, how to shift perceptions. Meeting 3 is communicating simply and powerfully. 4 is engaging and mobilizing teams and employees. 5, how to manage up. 6, handling overwhelm and getting control of time. 7, thinking comprehensively to get great ideas. 8, influencing with impact. So there's one of these a month. These are the 2 hours of content. 9, building your power base and strong relationships. 10, strategic planning. 11, creating a high-performance culture and preparing for graduation. Then there's a coaching session. And 12, graduation and taking your leadership beyond this and into the community. So this creates great leverage for you as a coach and for the organization because you bring everybody together. You don't have to have 24 different coaching sessions. So that's one way of bringing leverage, and a lot of organizations like that because where they'll invest $50,000 to $100,000 to coach one executive, they might not invest that much to coach a single person. Okay, and again, each meeting is about 4 hours once a month. And again, results are baked in here because you have results and accountability at the beginning of every session when people describe what they did between sessions. They create an accountability plan at the end. There's goals at the beginning of the whole session. In the middle, their goal is to find one thing that will make a difference. There's coaching between sessions. And at the graduation, you're going to prepare a toast, if it will. Every session they submit a results tracking form where they tell you the results they've gotten, and you present a summary of the results of each graduate at the end. So you get a whole stack of results to present. It's really an amazing process. So that's one way of getting leverage in this process. So you can do it one-on-one, like we described. You can create an academy. And again, the Center for Executive Coaching has a turnkey academy for you. Here's a testimonial for someone who was promoted from senior director to vice president, which is pretty cool. Another add-on that I really like is teaching managers to coach, right? Ideally, a person's manager is the best source of development. So if you want to create a true culture of coaching and leadership development and get the most leverage, you want to train every manager in a company to be a coach. You can't beat that. So they're identifying high potentials who can potentially succeed them when they move up. So it's great for the succession plan. And what you're basically doing is making best-in-class executive and leadership coach training available to managers. At the same time, building in performance management, rewards, and recognition that supports leaders so they can take on new roles. And you need an organization that's growing and has career paths. So managers are moving up and they're coaching the people who report to them to take their place. And you have engaging new assignments so people keep advancing and developing. All right, so that's the second way that I really like, right? Why wouldn't you have an organization where managers are responsible for coaching and developing? It just is a natural. It makes total sense. All right, let's see some questions here, and then we'll talk about the Center for Executive Coaching and break. All right, how many people max for an academy group? I like 24 maximum. More than that, it gets a little unwieldy. So 12 to 24 is really good. How much support does the coach provide between sessions? What you're going to find there is it's good for the coach to send some emails and support to follow up. And it's the 80-20 rule. Like 20% of the people, like 4 of them, will need most of the support. So it's not that much. You want to provide 2 coaching sessions, one sort of between sessions 1 and 2, and one for everybody towards the end. So it's not as much support as you would think. Okay. Oh, good. One says, thanks for taking the BS and fluff out of coaching. Yeah, I wish more people would do that, quite honestly. Let's see what else we have here. Would you do an academy with high performers from different organizations? Yeah, the person I started this with does that. She has public sessions with small companies in the community who can't afford a big HR department. And so she pulls like the number 2 person, any high potentials, and brings them together in a group. And she's had great success with that. It goes very well. Okay. Ermil goes back to the coaching plan for one-on-one and says, would you maybe have more than 1 week between initial and session 2? Oh yeah, absolutely. You might meet with them just to do some coaching though, even without the assessments, just to coach and see how they're doing. But that's right. You could still meet and coach. All right, let's see a few more questions here. How successful have you been in selling the idea of managers being coaches? I find that the objections are around time and that this is one more thing for managers to learn. Yes, I suppose some companies, again, when companies come to me, it's already a sold idea if it comes from senior executives. If it comes from HR, you never know, because sometimes it's HR's idea and they don't have the power to sell it to the rest of the organization. So it just depends who's calling me. When it's senior leadership, I'm happy. They usually want to make it happen. When it's HR, it could go either way depending on how much power HR has in the organization. Heather says, what are the signals or signposts that a high potential, nowhere to hide program could be great value to an organization? For me, it's the biggest question to ask is, how's your bench strength? Right? That's what it is. Can your if their organization is growing, how's their bench strength? So I'm doing one now, and the organization is growing at 20% a year. And they realize they just don't have the people who can help the organization to grow. So you're looking for growth, and you're looking for an organization that has technical people who maybe don't know how to manage. That's what you're looking for. Okay. The cost of an academy to the organization, if you're an external person, you can either charge a day rate, right? So it's going to take you about 20 days. So you can do it that way. Or you could do a per person rate, and that's anywhere from $1,500 to $4,000, depending on the size of the organization. Okay. Do I provide every participant with a one-on-one between sessions? No, not between each session. There's 2 one-on-ones that are included, and then support kind of as needed. All right. Can you have multiple academies running at one time within an organization? Absolutely. Usually the way these roll out is there'll be a pilot or 2, and then if those work well, then they start rolling them out simultaneously. All right, a couple more questions, and then we'll go to talk about the CEC. Is the coach delivering the content in the academy? Yes. You're like the dean, the outsourced dean of the academy. You would deliver the content. And in fact, with our book, our manual, you get the script. It's all perfectly turnkey. It's really nice. You just facilitate the script. The participants get the exercises. It's really easy to roll out. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, then there, for some of your specific questions, you might want to contact me directly. All right. So let's talk about the Center for Executive Coaching here for those who are interested, and then we'll move on from there. All right. So Center for Executive Coaching, as you've probably gotten a sense, is very different than other coach training programs. Okay. We don't mess around. We just don't. There's no fluff. I'm not pushing any kind of evangelical, new agey, pseudoscience stuff on you. This is about results. We talk about the clients. We don't talk about, I don't know, it's just all about clients, and it's about value. And that's what we're here to deliver, okay? Whether you're a seasoned coach or looking for a coach training program, you know, every program offers the ICF core competencies. Every program gives you a cohort with whom to practice coaching, although the quality of the cohort differs. Every program will give you hours towards an ICF designation, and they'll all give you the required mentor coaching, I suppose. So, you know, that's like driver's education, right? They're all going to follow the minimum stuff. Not great, not terrible, mediocrity. We're not about that. I want you to be in the top 5% of coaches, okay? I want you to know how to deliver value so that clients don't roll their eyes and say, this coaching was a terrible waste of time. I want you to get significant, measurable results for your clients. And I want you to feel psyched. I want you to be confident and energized and passionate. I want you to love what you do. That's the whole point. And you're only going to love what you do if your clients feel like they got a lot of value from you. Most programs don't talk about the clients first. That's where we start. Why do clients hire an executive or leadership coach? What do they expect? And then we work backwards from that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what you receive. Okay, let's see. Cynthia says, for those not members yet, he means it. This program is the real deal. Thank you, Cindy. So look, there's flexible options and pricing. If all you want is our certification, distance learning will get you the certified executive coach designation. You could get that in 2 to 4 months by submitting 6 recordings that are good of your coaching. We'll review those together one at a time. If you want the ICF, it also includes 90 hours of content. You can get the full ICF ACTP. We have an in-person seminar. Our next one is March 8th through the 11th. You leave with the certified executive coach designation and 32 hours towards the ICF. Those seminars are awesome. And it's not because of me and the content only. The people who come are amazing. And you just get great support. It's really positive, high energy, amazing people. All of our programs include the board certified coach training for that certification if you have a master's degree or higher. And we will even stretch out payments over 10 months, even a little bit longer if you're on an entrepreneurial budget. Our training sessions in person are in Sarasota, Florida. Easy to get to through Tampa or Sarasota. All right. What you receive, we have a 445-page proprietary textbook. Every week we have 3 one-hour teleclasses. Each is different. You can join anytime. They stand on their own. There's monthly webinars about different coaching situations. There's a member area with hundreds of hours of stuff that will be an ongoing resource for you. There's our 27 coaching toolkits, coaching contracts and forms, actual assessments. I've shown you some. Our business development intensive program, nobody offers anything like this. There's like 18 hours of webinars, step-by-step toolkits, sample proposals. We show you how to get and close engagements, one-on-one support forever, anytime you need it. Online coaching question generator. There's 1,000 powerful coaching questions included and indexed. We'll match you up with fellow members, including for ICF hours. The designations. If you use code BLUE and register this week, we'll get you an additional, at no cost, either the career or business coach certification. Also, we've just added our master facilitator certification. You can get it for $2,500, but it's our new program for executive coaches only because a lot of my income comes from facilitating. So there's now, I don't know how many, something like 17 facilitation solutions with PowerPoints and instructions on how to do them. Okay. The board certification, for those asking, is a different organization. 2,500 to 3,000 coaches have gotten it now. It's more of a psychological, it comes out of psychologists who wanted to respect people who have master's degrees. So it's very different than the ICF. Although it's a similar number of hours. You only need 30 coaching hours. It's a nice thing to do if you have a master's degree. So next steps if you're interested. is just contact me. If you're interested in coach training, take a look at our website for seasoned coaches. If you go to our website and click, there's a link called for seasoned coaches. And just take a look at the different programs. I'm happy to set up a call with you anytime. Heck, I'll even put my cell phone in on the chat. I mean, there are very few programs where you'll find that the main director is this accessible. Usually you'll get a really slick salesperson. There is my cell phone, 941-539-9623. I do ask that you will check out the website first.